Hello and welcome to the Monday, February 16th, 2026 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. And this episode is brought to you by the SANS.edu Grad Certificate Program in Cyber Defense Operations. In diaries, we had one by Russ McRae from Friday about, graph generators and APTs and how to automate creating these graphs with AI. There's a relatively new tool by Robert McDermott that Russ used for this diary, and it also solves a couple different problems. First of all, often when you're looking at sort of threat intelligence, it comes in unstructured forms. Yes, there are, probably more standards we need, but quite often you have articles and such that do describe particular threat. They may mention indicators of compromise and such. They may mention the IP addresses, host names, and then also like what these systems are, who they belong to. And where this gets then really powerful is where this tool not only extracts these indicators, but it also then creates graphs displaying the relationship between them. I can see this in particular useful for the larger sort of aggregations of reports to sort of find common sources of attacks, but also attack attribution. This may be helpful if you're into this kind of things. So certainly an interesting tool, and works here as Russ describes on commodity hardware. You don't need anything sort of special AI, but relatively modest, in my opinion, laptop does work to create these graphs rather quickly. And Microsoft's threat intelligence team published a quick social media post about a new variety of the famous ClickFix attack that they're seeing. So ClickFix, the victim is being tricked into copy-pasting a string from what looks like CAPTCHA into a command prompt and then executing them. Now, a lot of defensive techniques then focus on sort of these living off the land binaries that are being executed here. What's sort of different here is that they're actually then retrieving the next level PowerShell script via nslookup. And also the nslookup kind of is a little bit tricky here. So the nslookup is forexample.com, which of course is the test domain and commonly considered harmless, but they're sending the request to a custom DNS server that will then return a CNAME, basically another host name, and that host name is the PowerShell script that's then being executed. Quite often when you're looking for DNS anomalies, you're looking basically for odd host names that people are looking up. And in this case, it would really just be, initially at least, example.com. The odd CNAME coming back would certainly be a tip-off then. And then, of course, maybe if you're seeing any lookups then for the A record for that particular PowerShell script, that would certainly trigger some alerts, also because the name being looked up here is fairly long and has odd characters in it. But probably the best sort of defensive technique here is to just eliminate lookups to unauthorized DNS servers. Internal users should look up via an authorized recursive name server or forwarding name server that will then forward queries to, well, for example, a provider like Cloudflare or some filtering service like OpenDNS. And Google released a new version of Chrome on Friday. This version fixes one vulnerability, use after free vulnerability in cascading style sheets that is already being exploited in the wild, or at least an exploit has been cited in the wild. So definitely keep Google Chrome updated as usual. Restart it once a day and at least once a week. Double check that you're running the latest version. And then we have a good article by Sandro Gauci summarizing some of the issues with turn servers. And I don't really see people talk much about it, so that's why I add this as a reminder here. STUN, Turn are both protocols meant to allow media streaming across NAT. STUN usually just helps you set up the connection, but then the connection works directly sort of end-to-end through NAT. Now, if STUN doesn't work, then you can use Turn, which also relays the media traffic through a server that is reachable by both sites. The problem with this is that you're essentially introducing these proxies, these turn servers that can be used to more or less proxy a wide range of traffic, and often sort of the inherent access control in these servers isn't all that great. They're really sort of focusing on making things work, which then often leads to abuse of these servers, in particular if they're hosted inside your infrastructure. So definitely something to be aware of and be cautious of, that you are not really relaying here any traffic that you don't intend to relay. And yes, this is sort of a good sort of review of the different issues that can show up with a turn. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks for listening, thanks for liking, and thanks for subscribing to this podcast. And as always, talk to you again tomorrow. Bye.